Do you remember these arcades? Well, not arcade key rings. This is a pretty big key ring, really, but it's pretty cool. Space Invaders. It's actually fully playable as well. I didn't switch it on because it's pretty loud, actually. No, I'm talking about where these come from, where these are housed. Arcade centers. We used to just call them arcades, but yeah, that's what this video is about. It's about the death of arcades. Pretty much, they're pretty much gone now, and I miss them. I miss them a lot. I think it's quite easy to, when you're younger, you're living in the moment and you kind of don't consider how things could drastically change over the years. And, one day suddenly something you really enjoyed just vanish. I probably played other arcade games before Street Fighter II: The World Warrior, but that's the one that has stuck in my memory. If I was on holiday with my parents or travelling anywhere, all I'd really care about was finding an arcade, and I'd usually ignore most of the games and go straight for Street Fighter II if it was there. Besides brick and mortar arcades, my early memories also involve fairgrounds, the kind that would travel around and set themselves up in large fields. They still exist, they're still popular, but I haven't seen any housing video games in a long time. I don't remember ever being all that interested in the rides, to be honest. Yeah, do you remember fairgrounds having big, heavy arcade cabinets in them, set in an actual truck with an open side? I never see those anymore. It's rare, but occasionally I will see those lame penny pushes at fairgrounds. Those things didn't entertain me for long, even back then when I was a small child. Why were arcades popular in the first place? Video games exist through technology. Back then, engineers and developers could make games on high-end hardware which consumers couldn't get at home. A single arcade cabinet would be built, and that would cater towards thousands of people in a public space. Basically the opposite of the home market, which, let's not forget, was a lot smaller back in the 70s and 80s. It grew though, of course, but more on that later. So, what would you do? You'd spend some change to try out your skills for a short period of time on a unique title which you couldn't get at home. When these games did get released later on a home platform, it would be an inferior port, a cut-down version which didn't hold a candle to the original. Another reason why arcades were great was that they were such a great place for socialising. You'd meet people there, make friends, play games with them. It was great. So why did arcades die out? Arcades aren't completely gone, but it's rare to see them anymore, especially decent ones. They're usually filled with those lame machines, those ones made for winning tickets, and then you'd exchange them for prizes. Not my thing. Several things led to the demise of real arcades, which in retrospect are pretty obvious. The first one was advancements in games at home, as in consoles, PC games, all of them. Technology is always advancing. Arcade games continued to advance, but at a slower pace than home platforms, so gradually home platforms caught up. The gap between home ports and arcade games gradually closed in release time and quality. This led to games at home gaining in popularity and taking the allure away from arcade centres. Also, video games at home are consumed in a different way. You buy it outright, you sit at home, and you can play it for as long as you want. No spare change required. This game could be an arcade port like Gradius on the NES. When you die, you don't have to insert a coin to play again. Besides graphical fidelity though, it's a very similar game. This is fine, but can you do more at home? Arcade games were designed around the mechanics of gaining credits by inserting money, but people developing original titles for home release could design games which didn't rely on this. There are different game genres in arcades, but they usually all have a similar gameplay loop. You will learn how to survive on a credit, and then when you die or run out of time, you will start again. The amount of time this all happens in is pretty short. I mean, if the game has an end to it and you're good, it could be completed within one credit in about 20 minutes, depending on the title. I'm referring to mostly 90s games here. I know a lot of titles before that were designed to go on forever. A game made for a home platform didn't have to do this. In fact, a different style is probably preferable. You want a longer experience, perhaps one that doesn't feel as punishing as well. They don't have to be purely about dexterity or experience at home. Actually, the gameplay loop of the entire game just doesn't have to be as short. Now, I will refrain from saying that games made for home release are deeper than arcade ones. This is a common stance, but I disagree with it. I think they're just different. Not that it really matters anymore. So yeah, things like console games just caught up with arcade games. We were already starting to see some pretty snazzy arcade ports in the early 90s, like Street Fighter 2 on the Super Nintendo. It wasn't arcade perfect, but it was alright. Personally, I noticed the shift when the PlayStation came out. Tekken and Ridge Racer weren't old games in the arcades, and here they were at home, and they were arcade perfect. Well, I thought they were. They were close. It wasn't until years later when I compared them, the arcade version of Ridge Racer was still a little bit better. By this point, arcades were also failing to innovate. The tech got better, as usual, but the same genres were being used over and over again. The advent of Konami's Dance Dance Revolution kept them on life support for a few more years, but by the mid-2000s, arcades were a shadow of their former selves. I have noticed a sort of retro revival going on over the past 5 to 10 years. Places, usually bars, will get some games, maybe even make the whole place games themed, but they always have small issues. Usually like a lack of games, cheap cabinets, a propensity towards only the big hitters like Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, stuff like that. They'll always have stand-up cabinets in the 80s fashion, but their audience are people who were kids in the 90s. I don't know about you, but arcade cabinets in the 90s in the UK were 95% sit-down ones for me. Other places will just skip arcade games and just use some consoles like a tatty old Mega Drive running at 50Hz. If they do have real arcade games though, the main issue is that they will be on free play, which ruins most games which were fundamentally designed around coin collection. Taking this away makes games like, say, Metal Slug a mindless half-an-hour cakewalk. Why bother dodging bullets when you can infinitely respawn for free? Just hold right on the joystick and keep firing. This is an easy game, right? Don't get me wrong though, places like these are better than nothing, but it's just not the same. An arcade may not seem that special if you think of the handful of components which makes up the whole. It's not like we've lost those components. We can still play games, socialise and so on, but those components were combined to make something special which I think has been lost to time. Was there any bad things about arcades? You could run into some nutters, but I met the nicest people I've ever known in arcades. To be honest, for me, I don't remember having any ugly run-ins with anyone, no fights or anything like that, and I spent a lot of the 90s in arcades. Oh man, the social aspect was brilliant. You'd play with or against strangers and your pocket money would be on the line. Sometimes it was quiet, sometimes it was rammed. I remember going on a Saturday with a friend and we'd got pretty good at X-Men Children of the Atom, you know, the Capcom game. The place was packed and we survived on 50p for what felt like hours. We would take turns playing each match, we had a constant stream of dudes who thought they could beat us, and yes, I'm afraid it mostly was guys back then, at least in my parts. I'd meet players of all differing skill levels. The thing is, I usually didn't know until they sat down and started playing. That was a part of the excitement. For me, it usually turned into me getting my ass whipped. Yes, I played fighters a lot, but I was always middle of the road when it came to skill. Hey, you can love something without being good at it. Oh, also, another great thing about these places, especially in the really old days, new games which you'd never heard of before would suddenly appear in your arcade. New, shiny, and mind-blowingly advanced. You may sometimes see previews in magazines beforehand, but sometimes some random game would turn up and you'd be like, what the hell is this? With the dawn of the internet and many changes to the games industry over the years, those arcade experiences are long behind us. Technology just has advanced. Everything is easily accessible now, which is a good thing. But I guess this is just one of those weird examples of missing something because it was limited. Not having easy access to those games made them special. Oh well. there's nothing I can do about it. It's just entertainment anyway, so I try not to let it worry me too much. I hope you enjoyed this video. Bye.